What is the most intoxicated you have ever been? I know I have been to Las Vegas. I do not remember ever being in Las Vegas. Years ago. Backpacking on my own in Berlin. Had been out on one of those bar crawls that are targeted at people just like me at that time. The final stop was one of those multi-level clubs that Berlin is famous for. I was wasted and time to call it a day. I stumbled out of the club and found my way to a taxi. I hop in the back of the cab. And in my thickest drunkest Australian accent declare, "Seinfeld place please." After a bit of drunken back and forth, we managed to figure out that I probably meant, Seinerfelder Platz. €90 later, I'm pretty sure I fell asleep in the cab, and the driver dropped me off at the station. I spent the next 45 minutes wandering up and down the street with a fold-out map out in front of me trying to figure out where I was and why I couldn't find my hostel. At least 2 different people came up to me to see if I was okay or needed help. I finally found my hostel. Directly across the street from where the cab had dropped me. 0.38 on a breathalyzer. The breathalyzer was both the best and worst purchase I made in college. Waking up in a house I didn't recognize. With a girl that didn't live there either. Whose name I didn't know. With my pants in a car that didn't belong to any of us. I left a party with a bottle because a girl I liked made out with someone else. Eventually walked back and fell asleep in the boat my buddy's dad had out front because I didn't want to go back inside the party. Woke up getting poked with a broom and told to get out. Had climbed into a neighbor's boat several streets down. I woke up in a treehouse 3 doors down from my house with a crocheted shawl and a Pampered Chef stoneware 8x13 bakeware. During college. In about 1993. I was at a birthday party in downtown Baltimore and left after midnight to take a bus home. When I woke up I was lying on a pile of sheet metal in some kind of factory. Welding and sparks flying around me. I stumbled out. Past some kind of locker room. And out into a yard of warehouses and factories. I made my way to a parking lot about half a mile away and hitchhiked out of there with a guy finishing up his factory shift. He asked how I ended up there and I mumbled something about getting jumped by some guys and dumped there. He told me next time to punch one guy as hard as I could in the nose and the others would back off. He dropped me off at a bus stop and I looked around but couldn't see the Baltimore skyline, so I had no idea where I was. Was I even in Maryland? When the bus came I got on and the bus driver gave me directions. One bus transfer later I was at the Inner Harbor. And another transfer got me home. It turns out I had somehow gotten to Sparrows Point. About 25 miles from Baltimore. But have no idea how it happened. About 6 drinks in I bet some cocky douche that he could not knock me out with a single clean punch. I barely won and proceeded to drink the pain away, which led to falling through a coffee table and falling asleep in a bathtub while my EMT friend checked on me all night. The hangover lasted for days. Had alcohol poisoning. Passed out in the snowbank in -30 weather. Thankfully someone found me soon after. My fingers and the tip of my nose are sensitive to cold, but it's no frostbite. Recovering alcoholic here. When I got sober, I had to go to the hospital to be medically detoxed. I felt 100% sober. And I tested at a 34 BAC. Which is enough to kill most people. It was around this time that I promptly had a seizure. Fell into a coma for 3 days. Then never touched alcohol again. ETA at this time in my life. I was drinking 40 shooters of Fireball a day. Which was around 1/2 a gallon of whiskey. I had my parents take me to the hospital because I couldn't eat, ulcers in my esophagus. I could still drink. I was losing my eyesight. And I was trying to dry out on my own. I was experiencing delirium tremens as well. I have been sober for 2 years. And I have end-stage cirrhosis at 35. Edit FAQ. I will need a transplant at some point in my life. But I'm doing really well and probably won't need it for 10+ years. I do not have diabetes. I stayed sober because the process of getting sober was some of the worst pain I've ever been through and I'd rather not do it again. I don't have cravings anymore. Fireball was my drink of choice. But I'd drink anything. The 40-a-day thing didn't happen until the last 3 to 4 months. But before that I was still drinking close to a shooter an hour. My body was physically addicted. And I hated drinking for the last 2 years. If you're struggling, please seek medical attention. Medical detox saved my life. Edit 2. Adding more because y'all are struggling. If you're wondering if you have a problem, then you have a problem. If you're not able to quit on your own, or you get ill while quitting, seek medical attention immediately. I took naltrexone when I first quit. For about 6 months. And it helped tremendously. Naltrexone, therapy, and a wonderful support system has helped me. You can beat the disease. And you can get better. Do you remember last night? Oh. Never a good way to start a conversation. No. I don't even remember going home. You don't remember what you said to me? I was blacked out. I'm sorry. Whatever I said. I promise I didn't mean it. I was drunk. ... You said I was the best girlfriend ever. You kept saying you love me. And that I'm a really good driver. Like I said, I was blacked out. And I don't mean any of it. I'm sorry. OMG. I can't believe drunk you is nicer than sober you. That was 17 years ago. And we're still together. The night before the morning I found a tortilla in the tray of my CD player. Alcoholic in recovery here, waving hand, medium light skin tone. I have a great many stories, but I've chosen one where drugs and other illegal activities were not involved. There are so many times where I've previously reached this same level of intoxication, but this one was by far the worst in terms of being in a blackout. This specific occasion accounted for the longest amount of time I had ever stayed in a blackout. I woke up in the dark and started screaming because I thought I was in the trunk of a car until my friend opened the bathroom door and flicked the lights on. They had coaxed me into the bathtub to contain my alcohol-induced vomiting to the space I was least likely to destroy. I wasn't wearing any pants and I never did find them again. I had blue stains on my light gray shirt and I was covered in Cheeto dust. I don't remember leaving the bar we had gone to or getting back to my friend's place at all. I had red ink all over my butt and my light blue thong, which completely mystified me until I went through my camera roll. Someone had taken a video on my phone of me bent over the shooter bar and having a stripper sign my butt with a red marker. I had 2 broken toes, a chipped front tooth, and a really deep bite mark on my right nipple that had drawn blood. Still don't know who or what was involved in any of those things happening. I'll be 6 years sober on June 19th. Smile. I woke up and went to brush something off my shoulder and it was the floor. Went out after work with some coworkers in Manhattan, NYC, and woke up on the 3 train in the Bronx in a storage yard on Saturday morning. It was a miracle I didn't get robbed. No one woke me up either. Tears of joy. I had to call for help to get out of there and I received a summons for public intoxication. Got 2 cocktails the size of a fishbowl because I thought more of my friends wanted to share them. They all changed their minds and got their own drinks. Only got a few people to have a couple of sips of each, so I ended up drinking 2 massive cocktails and then went to another bar and had a screwdriver. Spent most of the night dancing but ended up falling asleep in a pool of my own vomit once I got home. Ordered 10 tequila shots for a group. Only 2 people took me up on it, so I wasn't gonna let them go to waste. 2 hours later I woke up with a new hat. Laying like Jesus on the cross on the hood of a random car in a near-empty parking lot in Antigua. 15 beer plus half a bottle of absinthe. Ended up pissing on a oscillating fan and passing out mid-piss. So I'm told. Hungover for the next 2 days. I was 20. 35 now. And I rarely drink these days, lol. I woke up on the floor with one leg on the couch in a stranger's living room in only tighty whities that were not mine, and my penis and balls were stuck out through the little hole flap in the front. A guy around my age came out of a hallway and said, "Oh good. You're finally awake. Can you please leave?" I was so embarrassed and freaked out I just got up and walked out the door. Got to the road and realized I was only a few minutes walk from my friend's house, where we had started drinking the night before. So I instinctively started walking that way, but I was in such a daze trying to remember what had happened that I didn't realize my penis was hanging out till a car drove by. Then it hit me that I was basically naked. And I started walking as fast as I could to my friend's house. No shoes plus back roads made it. So I couldn't run. Luckily, when I got there, his mother and sisters were all gone. And he and another friend from a few miles down the road were sitting playing video games. I immediately asked them WTF happened and why the fuck they left me with a stranger, and they just laughed. To this day, I have yet to get a straight answer from the one of them still talk to as to what happened that day. Never got my clothes back either. I forgot to mention my friends and I were around 16 to 17. I'm 32 now, when this happened. And the whole event took place on a hillbilly mountain in nowhere, Alabama. When you get so drunk you go into autopilot mode. Got into a bottle of Everclear with some people at a party. My friends, all of whom are dirty fucking liars, say that I was talking to my french fries after that. College house party for Halloween. It was a theme where you bring your own cup. But it can't be a cup. And it would get filled up and you can drink out of that for the night. So I took a coffee pot. 10 full cups of rum punch. I got through all of them before midnight, then was blacking out periodically. Had my best friend apparently. Because I do not remember at all. Ride me like a toboggan down a flight of stairs, then I hit the bottom and stayed there for a bit. I remember getting up. Stumbled to a couch that was in the basement. And passed out. That was it. I woke up being carried up the stairs over my boyfriend's shoulder, and he took my best friend and I to his place for the night, where we slept in his bed and he slept on the couch. A couple of months ago I was at a museum. It was almost empty, so I decided to get naked. Then I needed something from the reception. There was no one there, so I very ungracefully climbed over the desk. Sat my bare ass down and worked as a nude receptionist for a bit. I know this museum pretty well, so I think I did an okay job. The visitors weren't upset or anything. I found a marker and had started drawing all over myself, so they thought it was part of the exhibition. This was at 11-ish on a weekday, by the way. After about an hour a guard came over and said I wasn't allowed to be naked there. Having already fulfilled my duties as nude receptionist, I got dressed and left. I've been sober 2 weeks now and I'm going to awe. In college I spent a year in China. And there was a weird social culture where our Chinese friends were always trying to get us to drink. I'm not much a drinker. But it was usually easy to avoid the outings that were going to involve a lot of drinking. Usually. One day I ended up in a room with a few Chinese students and a few of my American classmates. Lots of drinking was happening and they wanted me to join. I told them I couldn't stay. So they said I should have one for the road. I said okay. And with poorly suppressed giggles they handed me a regular drinking glass with about 6 ounces of baijiu in it. Let me take a moment to explain baijiu for anyone who's unfamiliar. It's a 120-ish proof rice liquor that tastes like bottled evil. You could get the good stuff at high prices. Or you could buy it in plastic bottles for less than the price of a bottle of water. Someone on our trip found a store that sold it in bottles with baby bottle nipples attached to the cap for people who wanted to drink until they passed out without the risk of spilling any before they woke up again. So, looking at this glass, and not wanting to make Americans look weak, I said something about, "Oh, you could have given me a big one if I have to go early." And downed it in one go. I thanked them for their hospitality and set out for my room. It was conveniently located right across the hall. That was lucky for me. Because on my first step across the hall, I was fine. The second step felt sloppy. And by the third step I was holding onto my doorknob for dear life. I made it to my bed and sat on it for a few hours, pondering my life choices while I sobered up enough to be able to get dinner under my own power. I quit my job at about 2 a.m. I called the owner of the company to tell him how much I hated working for him, and basically I went in the next day hungover as AF and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing here, you quit?" and they played the voicemail. I went home and probably got drunk. I'm about 3 years sober and I found out the reason I was drinking so much was I was depressed from living as a man. I am not a man as it turns out. And 33 days from now it'll be a year that I've been on estrogen. 3 I'm Gloria. I had probably 10 to 12 shots worth of Jack Daniels under a 1-hour window. I remember talking about religion aggressively with my friends, and then all I remember next is waking up in the early morning on the living room floor in only my underwear, skull and crossbones. Probably the night I started hysterically crying in the middle of a birthday party with all of my coworkers. And I had no idea why. Anytime anyone asked me what was wrong I would just sob. I don't know www. I still to this day do not know what my problem was. I was having a wonderful time. I got so drunk that I ended up getting diarrhea. Made it to the toilet luckily. Fell in the bathtub. Threw up in the birthday girl's bed. And the worst part was my mother was there for the whole thing. She got stuck taking care of my dumb drunk ass. I went to 3 birthdays in one night. Walked 5 km home as I was too nauseous to ride in a taxi. Climbed into bed and fell asleep. Woke up the next day to be informed that I had peed in the empty shoebox that was sitting on the floor. Came to as flight I was on was landing in Minneapolis in a flight from Albuquerque. Have no idea why I was on the flight or what I wanted to do in Minneapolis. I ended up touring about downtown for a day. And was on a plane back home the next day. Nice place. But no idea why I bought tickets. My friends say I asked for a ride to the airport and that I seemed perfectly normal. I don't drink anymore. *edit. Forgot to mention I had a transfer in Salt Lake. Don't remember one thing about it. I played baseball in my teens. One night I got blackout drunk and woke up in left field of the diamond my team played at. I was back in that same spot later that day. Drank 1.75 of bourbon. Passed out. Woke up, drank another 1.75 of bourbon. Violently threw up blood. That's the night liquor was cut out of my life and I slowed down. All the vomit was red as fuck. I tried to stay awake and crashed out. I got lucky and woke up the next afternoon. Went to a party with my girlfriend, now wife, and played a few drinking games. Flippy Cup, King's Cup, Beer Pong, and last but not least No Face. No Chase. No Face. No Chase sent me over the edge because I kept winning every single round and drank a good amount of 1800 tequila. I drove back to our apartment. But when I woke up I was in my uncle's house. Upstairs in their hallway with my underwear on inside out and my uncle was nudging me with his foot. When I looked up at him he said, "Must have been a fun night if you ended up here. Before you leave, clean up the mess." He went downstairs and as I struggled to get off the floor while trying to figure out WTF happened after we left that party. I opened the door to the other room and the mattress to the bed is on the floor with my girlfriend passed out on it, but there's puke all around it and leading into the hallway. Wild night. Still don't have all the answers. I haven't drank a drop of alcohol since and the smell of 1800 tequila makes my soul sick. That was 8 or so years ago. I took too much acid and I believed for a couple of weeks that I had died, but nobody wanted to admit it to me. I wouldn't come to the phone when people called because I was dead, but I did keep going to work. In a library. You can still shelve books and read stories to kids when you're dead. A few pressed Xannies and several shots. It's amazing how decisions you don't remember making can so negatively affect your life. Stoner friends just wanted to chill. And I wanted to actually go out and do something. My friend said, "You can drink all the liquor in the apartment. Just hang out." I drank a 6-pack of pre-mixed White Russians. My friend said, "I have vodka but the only chaser I have is a lime Kool-Aid." I remember holding a tall glass of green liquid. And then I was waking up on the bathroom floor soaked in sweat. Like all my clothes were legit soaking wet. I puked every 10 minutes. Eventually my friends moved me to their bed. Which was terrible decision making on their part. Their sheets ended up looking like someone peed on them. Eventually I got mentally ready and prepared for the tensest journey of my life. Could I puke? Rush to my car. And get home within 10 minutes before I puked again? At this point it was alcohol poisoning. Not drunkenness. I want to be very clear that I had sweated, puked the alcohol out. I did it. I got to my apartment and was puking in the toilet within 20 seconds. I don't remember law. Got a birthday boot at the local German beer garden. It's the size of 3 liters. Tried to beat the time record but that was an idiotic idea as it was 18 seconds. I failed at my attempt obviously, but I drank about half of it in 30 seconds. Slowly finished the rest but I was out of it and my friends say I was doing the Thriller while standing on top of the table. I can't dance but apparently I was moonwalking pretty good. I got yelled at to get down. Then my chicken parm that I had for dinner was coming up and when I went into the bathroom to let it out. There was no toilet to throw up in so I had to use the sink. From my friend's account of it. He then walked in and saw me trying to sift with my hands the puke into the trash can below that I didn't see. Yeah. Never again. 6 hours after I stopped drinking I blew a 40 in the hospital. It took 3 days to retrace my steps. 0 tenths do not recommend. I need to tell the story of my coworker Kenny. Kenny drank quite a bit. Usually every night. He was at a party absolutely shit-canned. And fell down the stairs. Cut his head wide open. His friends brought him to the ER. When they got there, there was a huge number of people waiting. This was going to be several hours of waiting at the very least. Kenny didn't want that. He wanted to get back to the party to drink more. So he yells, "I've been shot in the head." Everyone scrambles to get him in a room. The doc takes one look and says, "You haven't been shot." "Nah. I want to get back to the party and didn't want to wait." The doc takes some blood, but leaves fairly angry. When he finally comes back, the blood test says Kenny in blowing a 38. Kenny is thrilled. "Can I get a copy of that?" The doc was furious, and it was obvious Kenny was going to wait even longer now. Sadly, the doc left him in a room with a phone. So Kenny called every service he could. Pizzas, tow trucks, you name it, all showed up at the hospital asking for the doctor. The doctor had enough and just wanted Kenny out. So he came in with a shot of Novocaine and stuff to stitch him up. He picked up the syringe and said, "This is going to sting a little." Kenny said, "Hey, that's no problem, doc, because this is gonna stink a little," and ripped a monster fart. The doc slammed the Novocaine back down and started sewing without it, making sure to yank the thread as hard as he could. Kenny was so cocked he didn't even notice. "Ah, Kenny, you crazy bastard. I miss you." I've been blackout drunk before. It was awful when I came to and realized I couldn't remember anything that just happened or how I ended up where I was. The worst part is how once it happens the first time, it's more likely to happen going forward. I wrestled naked with two of my friends and then fell off the bed. Fell asleep and proceeded to shit all over myself in the floor. Woke up and thought I had to go still, so I carried my shit with me to the toilet and sat down like the idiot I was. The cleanup took longer than expected. Surprisingly got our bond back on the Airbnb too. Got plastered playing 9 holes, pub crawl, dressed as a golfer. My night ended at hole, pub, 6. Found myself hugging a lamppost chatting away to myself on the high street. Police took charge off my phone and rang my sister who picked me up. It was also Christmas Eve and my friend's birthday party. Oddly enough, it was also the only time I've ever woke up without a hangover. That's a hole in one in my books. Edit. I have never played golf in my life. I was sat in the walk-in wardrobe having a shite, convinced I was in the toilet. Only the screams of my then partner kinda shook me out of it. All I kept saying to her was, "WTF are you doing in the men's toilet?" To make matters worse, when I stood up to speak to her, I had one of her things stuck to my ass with shite. I'm not proud. And there are more like that. I was a bad drinker. At a barbecue I had so much to drink that instead of opening the beer cans I started biting the sides and chugging them. Then the shots came. I woke up on my couch with burns on my leg. Turns out I tripped on the Weber grill and splashed hot coals on my leg. I was led back to my apartment and put to bed. I woke up on a toilet with a mound of shit in it. I had eaten a lot of pulled pork the night before. Almost exactly 9 years ago to the day. I consumed 5-ish quart mugs of Spaten Optimator and blacked out. Friends brought me home and put me in bed. Had vivid dreams that I took a dump in every garbage can in my house. Thankfully it was only a dream. Don't know how drunk I was the night before. But I woke up in the back of someone's car on a beach in San Felipe. It was the middle of the afternoon on a hot summer day and all the windows were rolled up. I've never been so hungover. Never did figure out whose car that was. Or how I got in it. I do know how I got to Baja in the first place. I wasn't that intoxicated, but it took me a bit to find my friends. I went to a barbecue house party after a softball game. I'd never had Jaeger and thought, hey, this doesn't taste so bad. I drank way too much. So drove me home and put me to bed. The next morning we had a flight to Canada. I was still drunk. My so-called my mother, who has a lot of experience with alcoholics, to get some advice on how to sober me up. Ate a ton of bread, carbs. Didn't really help. It was an interesting flight. I did not hurl. Man, alcohol is such a bad drug. Bought booze for party. Party cancelled. I drink 2 liters of blueberry vodka over like 10 hours. I made edibles before for the party. Ate those too. Passed out, woke up, threw up. Phone wouldn't work, so I threw that shit. It broke. I can't eat any flavored like blueberries anymore. Did Tony Montana line of K thinking it was blow. I was an examiner for a DUI recognition course run by the state police. I'd participated in the past as a volunteer drunk. But what I wasn't prepared for was after the drunks had been sent back to their dorms and I delivered scores. See, participants got their drink of choice. So we had wine coolers, beer, whiskey, vodka, etc., etc., all in large quantities. All left over and destined to be poured down a drain. Were we actually going to pour it down a drain? Hell no. I was informed. In fact, several of the officers broke out even more drinks. I don't remember much past 6 p.m. that evening. Though I didn't leave until 9 or 10. When I woke the next afternoon. In my own bed. And stumbled out onto the deck with a cold leftover coffee and what I'm sure ranks as one of the world's biggest hangovers ever. My neighbor pops out and demands to know how the hell he can get 2 sexy cops to come tuck him in. Apparently around 11 p.m. my car and a police cruiser had come screaming into the parking lot. Driven by 2 tiny blonde cops. Who proceeded to carry my sleeping ass into my apartment and then make themselves coffee. Senior year Halloween weekend. I went to a party as a sexy cat. It was just a black teddy suit with cat ears. I can't even recall how much 17-year-old me drank. But my friends lost me. They called my mom and said they couldn't find me. I lived 4 minutes away from the party house. My mom began to drive over and almost hit drunk me that wandered off from the party and fell asleep on the side of the road. I was trying to walk home but got tired. Doing the worm in a casino parking lot at 2 a.m. Then throwing up right after that probably. I was told I kept trying to throw fruity pebbles at the bonfire to make rainbows. So drunk that the next day in the afternoon I was talking to people that weren't there and seriously thought my house was angry at me. I was beyond blackout the night before. In retrospect, I probably needed medical attention. Few years ago smoking at an abandoned church where some friends started coughing a lung up from 2 giant back-to-back rips and had run from the cops right after. Was still coughing while running and passed out. Woke up the highest I've ever been. My eyes were open but I couldn't see. I couldn't walk. I don't even remember how I got home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.